Inshallah. Inshallah, ya Rab. Aleft alaykum. Alright, so it's an important thing to be in tune with Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala and the things that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala sends us, so that bi'idhnillah subhanahu wa ta'ala we know how to deal with it. Because like we said, the people who get the biggest hardships are the ones closest to the prophets. The prophet being number one, alayhi salatu wassalam, and then those that are near him. So it's not that when you become a good Muslim that you no longer have to face hardship anymore. It's that when you become, inshallah, a good Muslim, someone who's close with Allah Azza wa Jal, that you know how to deal with the hardship. And the first aspect of dealing with the hardship is accepting the qadr of Allah Azza wa Jal upon you. تمام؟ إننا ونتعلم والتعليم والتذكر والتذكير والنفع والانتفاع والإفادة والاستفادة والدعاء على الهدى والدلالة على الخير والحث والتمسك بكتاب الله وسنة رسول الله ابتغاء مرضات الله وقربه وثوابه سبحانه وتعالى. Praise Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, praise its worthy of beneficent bestower of bounties and mercies. And we ask our Lord Most High to send copious and unlimited and eternal blessings and salutations upon our beloved Prophet, Sayyidina Muhammadin sallallahu alayhi wa ala alihi wa sahbihi sallam. And we acknowledge the traditional owners of the land in which we teach and learn, and we pay our respects to the elders past and present. So if we continue, inshallah azza wa jal, go up to the fourth intention. As we normally do, we recite in Arabic language first. قال المؤلف رحمه الله رضي الله عنه وعنكم نفعنا به وبكم. والنية الرابعة ينوي المسابقة إلى بيت المولى وسرعة الإجابة للنداء والمبادرة إلى إقامة العبودية لحصول من أتى زائرا قبل الدعوة. So if you look, I think it's page, in the book, it's page 48, the fourth intention, and on the PDF, 42 on the Jazakumullah Khairan on the PDF. He said, indeed, to hasten to the house of the sovereign to answer his call swiftly and endeavour to establish servitude through which to obtain a tremendous reward as the guest only visits. All right. So the continuation of the intention in going to the house of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, that's particular for the brothers, and then for the sisters if they have decided to make that prayer. Has anyone done that out of the sisters? Made a prayer at waqf? You lose it now? No? So you haven't done it. Have you done it?
No, I've done that.
Inshallah. So the sisters can get a prayer mat and make it as a waqf, so it's like a masjid, so they get the same. It's crazy.
Does it have to stay in that spot all the time?
No.
Oh.
This main thing is that you use it for ibadah, for worship.
Actually, I have a question about that. If I was to make the waqf thing, can anybody else use it as a Muslim?
Yeah.
So
anyone can use it. So the question is, can anyone use it? As long as it's used, as long as you don't sit there and watch TV, or when no one watches TV, swipe through your phone or whatever else it is. You don't use it for, I don't know, serving food on, or there's a doormat or whatever else. Then it's fine. It's a waqf, like any masjid or any musalla. It's how it's crazy, really.
Could a guy use it?
Yeah, you can do that. I got one. I made a waqf. I'll leave it there.
Why can't you conversate in the masjid?
No, you don't conversate in the masjid. No, there's no laghu. You shouldn't. The masjid is the place to remembrance of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Conversation shouldn't be the extra. It's makruh, and some of the mazahib makruh tahriman, so shouldn't be doing that. It's not a social place to go and meet inside the masjid. There should be a social place to meet. There should be a social place to meet around and outside of the masjid, but in the masjid there should be no talk about dunya, no lahu, no laib, no just wasting time, no entertainment, no play. That talk shouldn't be done in the masjid. It's not the place for that. Prophet ﷺ used to let the Sahaba wrestle in the masjid, but that was training for something else. And he used to do it to taltif al-qulub, to make them, let the young kids wrestle, and the older guys would watch and cheer it on. And when there's a troop that came from Ethiopia, they danced in the masjid of the Prophet of Allah ﷺ, but it's not idle talk. They were envoy coming from Ethiopia, from Habasha. They were envoy coming, and he was receiving them officially, alayhi salatu wasalam, as the head of state. So just hanging out and wasting time playing. Like people play with their phones. No, can't do that in the masjid. Unless you're like reading Qur'an, you're looking something up that's relevant to one's deen. Of course, but that's not gossip, that's not talking, is it? That's discussion. So that's the same thing if you just got up at places or whatever and get a really nice one so you can use it in winter, summer, depending what kind of floors you have, make it waqf and set it up. Because it's crazy. Look at the thawab. What the reward. No. You can roll it up and do whatever. But as long as it's declared as a waqf, in other words, a place that nothing else except the worship of Allah Azza wa Jal goes on. No. Isn't it?
What if other people doesn't know that place is waqf and take, for example, in a workplace you make waqf in one of the meeting rooms and then you do that in the salah?
You got to roll it up and take it with you and look after it then if that's the case. So the question was, what if other people, like in a workplace or whatever, they don't know that that's the case, then you've got to look after it. It's your responsibility, like anything else that's a waqf, that's for Allah Azza wa Jal, it's got to be looked after in the appropriate manner. All right? So yeah, there'll be no class next week, inshallah. So you got 2 weeks you're crazy. I mean, really, you're crazy if you don't do that, especially if you're a sister. You're crazy. Brothers really shouldn't be doing that. You should be going to the mosque or the musalla. But as sisters, you'd be nuts not to do that. It's a freebie.
Shaykh, how do you do it? Is there any specific words as well or not?
Just, I intend that this is a waqf for Allah. A waqf for musalla for Allah. English.
So we let our partners know.
Yeah, you should do one. Go get her a nice one if you want to get a gift for her. Is it Valentine's Day or whatever? Go get it. Huh? Oh, Ramadan. Yeah. Ramadan present. No, Eid, you got to get something nicer than that.
Something more expensive.
Yeah.
Some really nice expensive program.
Yeah, but it's got to be something that she can wear and show off. And look what my husband got me for Eid.
Can I ask a little bit off topic, but it's that Ramadan thing you mentioned?
Nice segue.
What's your view on Ramadan trees?
I've never heard of them. What's a Ramadan tree?
For kids, like you get them it's a crescent, but in the shape of a tree.
And?
Like a Christmas tree.
It's like meant to like for the kids get trees like a Christmas tree, so you get them a crescent tree.
So the kids, what with the Christmas tree?
You know how they get all excited seeing Christmas trees everywhere and they think it's cool, so you get a crescent tree?
I don't have seen one, so I don't know. But if the concept is to copy the Nasara or the Yahud, then it's problematic. Do some other thing. Can't you do like a cube? Can't you do a Ramadan cube? Like it's not good to do things like that because it's tashabbuh. You know what I mean? It's not, he said alayhi salatu wassalam that you'll follow them, shibran wa dhira'an bi dhira'an, like centimeter by centimeter or inch by inch and yard by yard, or whatever you want, centimeter by centimeter and meter by meter, whatever the distance is. They went into the lair of the goanna, like we know about goannas, we're Aussies, like the big dirty lizard. You would have gone into it. So it's not a good, that's at the end of times. The hadith is specific to the end of times. And we're in the end of times, so it's best to stay away from things like that, Children need to, unlike yesterday or the other day, whenever a friend of mine, the Turks have this thing where you're the godfather of the child. So I'm the godfather of the friend of mine, his Turkish children. And he's like, Santa Claus is real. And we're like, looked at his dad's like, no, good. So you can't teach that stuff to your kids. Why would an individual teach their child whom they love a lie? Why would we tell our kids lies? All it is conditioning so that later on, it's a trick. It's not, all these things are jinns, all these like fairies and all these things, they're all jinns, leprechauns, they're all jinns. They're all different types of jinns. Tooth fairy, the jinn came into my house and took my tooth. What is it sunnah to do with the tooth if it falls out? Bury it. And your hair, bury it. All these things, it's the fingernails, bury them. Anything that comes off your person, if you lose a finger, Allah, bury it. That's the sunnah. We'll leave it for the jinn fairy to come. And we teach our kids stuff like that. Like, that's bad. That's bad. How can we, as a society that thinks we're a society that's educated and civilized, teach our kids to lie? Lie to our kids and teach them to accept lies. That only brings them up later on to not know the difference between truth and falsehood. That's all it does. It's confusing for a child. Like really, that's child abuse. If you really want to be, I mean, not technically or clinically diagnosing it, but if you were to lie to your child in that manner about something, or daddy, the son, whatever, make up something, and the child service was to find about it, that's child abuse. And here we are as a society condoning it, and making movies about it, and whatever, and they go to the shop and sit on sand. We used to go. I'll probably went to my mum's albums, look it up. I'll probably have some photos from like the 70s where we used to sit on Santa's lap, and we used to get disappointed if Santa didn't come. My mum, al-Haddad, she'd get a bag. It was from Target, and Santa came. Well, it was from Target, Mum. Yeah, Santa shops at Target. Like, it's not a good thing to let your child be deluded by those things. So that's why we teach our stories that teach our children the stories of the prophets, because they're miraculous. And the other thing is this. The other thing is what are all children saying today? It's magic. No, it's not. If you want to teach them something, say it's miraculous. Tell them it's miraculous. Don't tell them it's magic. Magic's haram. Magic is haram. It's kufr, actually. It's not just haram. And so here we are, a generation. Remember, Ibi, when me and you went to watch some movie, when Ibi was real, real young, we went to watch a movie, and that movie wasn't showing. So what were we going to watch that day? No, it was... I was asking you, thank you very much. We were going to watch that Ice Age. I like Ice Age. It was classic. And then they weren't showing it. And then I go to him, I mean, we can't take a young bloke to the movies, and we're in the movie foyer and they can't go in. And I'm like, do you want to watch Harry Potter? He's like, yeah. I had no idea about Harry Potter. I didn't know what it was. I didn't know. And we went in there, and I'm like, say, read the 3 Quls, read Ayat al-Kursi. It was exactly shaitan. It was exactly how the jinns were, exactly, word for word. I don't know what number it was or whatever. Do you remember? Oh, it was young. He was young. But yeah, it was a long time ago. When he was young, now he's, mashallah, he's got a mo. Can't make it. I can't miss the guy. Right? So it was exactly how the jinns work, how they go into the sky and stand on their shoulders. And I was like, what is this? I freaked out. I'm not exaggerating. I was ready on myself and everything. Like, what is this? We're teaching our children to accept sihr. But what do you think the Dajjal is going to come with? It's going to come with sihr. No.
I have a question. You know it's not real. I mean, black hole.
What's not real?
As in, magic in that context is not real.
Yes, it is.
No, like, I mean, in terms of Harry Potter.
It is real.
It's real, but not like, regarding the views.
Of course. What do you think those words are? There's Assyrian, abracadabra is an Assyrian word that calls the jinns. It's not a joke. It's not a joke. That's for real. That's what the language of the jinns is, Assyrian. Like all that stuff you see is real. It's all real. It's all getting people prepared to be hit with the big shaitan, the Dajjal. It's all real. All of it's real. Yeah, but when a person keeps hearing those things and we become inclined, alhamdulillah, we're lucky, we're protected, we have wudu and we do all these things. But that's what it is. It's not fake. Like most of the stuff you see in the movie is not fake. It's real. They just adapt it. Like one time we were somewhere, I don't want to blame Ibi, but we were watching the X-Men, and the guy came, his name's Azazil. That's what his name is. And he's a shaitan, and he's on fire. Like, I freaked out. It's exactly what the shaitan is, exactly. Word for word. So yeah, it is real. And that's how they do things. And that's the shaitan at the end of time. And from the Dajjal at the end, that's the time we live in. We need to be careful about letting our kids, believe in that stuff. And if you watch a movie with your kids, sit down and critically analyze it afterwards. Oh, Dad, how was that? Because we know the Disney movies, they try and break down culture. Like Aladdin, she did whatever she wanted, and then the dad let her. Nemo, same thing. He went against his dad, and his dad in the end loves him. That's what it's there for, is to break down the mentality of the children, so they can go against the culture, go against the norms of the society, do their own thing, and they reinforce that we'll be okay for these things. So you got to be aware of what's going on and what your family are watching and what you're consuming, because it's a consumption. You just want to ask?
As adults then, even though we're aware of it, should we still not watch it?
Yes, we shouldn't watch it. Because let's say there was a movie, it was about sex. Would you watch it? Why? It's haram, right? There's a movie about taking drugs. Would you watch it? It's haram. So if the movie's about sihr, it's kufr. It's even worse than haram. We shouldn't be watching those things. We shouldn't be, putting ourselves in that situation. Our family, this brother beat you this time. Tafadhal.
Can you just repeat that very important hadith that you mentioned about the tashabuh and the Quran, the shibr and stuff like that?
Yeah, that's the Prophet ﷺ at the end of times will follow the ummah that came before us, the Jews and the Christians. Shibran bi shibran wa dhira'an bi dhira'an, that if they went into the lair of the lizard, we'd go into it. The lair of the lizard, the dub stinks. It's really bad. One time we smelt it in Yemen. It was the most, I smelt skunk in the United States, and it was nothing compared to that. It was disgusting. It was the filthiest smell I think I've ever smelled. And that's particular at the end of times. Don't follow them. Do your own thing. Yeah. Exactly.
I was going to ask what is the context of whatever movie you're watching is educational?
Well, if it's educational, it's something different, and depends on what you're going to do with that education that you have. But certainly, if it's educational, the effects on drugs on people, these types of things, yeah, then it's different. Is that you had the question?
Do you think hearing those musical words or whatever, do you think it has an effect?
Of course.
Like, do you think it actually does something?
So this is a good question. Do you think that hearing the words, the Syriani words, abracadabra, all these business has a... Of course it does. Calling the jinn. The jinn become present. These are the words that the sorcerers use. There's a block between us and the jinn. They're not allowed to come to our world. We're not allowed to go to their world. But the sorcerers, the witches and the wizards and these people, they open that portal, whatever you want to call it, between our world and their world. And they're the words they use. Of course it has an effect. And if your kid's going around with the wand saying stuff, you don't know what... You do not know what they're conjuring. That's the actual word. You don't know what they're conjuring. And later on your kid's frozen, or your kid's, crying and yelling and screaming, and then they're seeing, whatever they're seeing. They're actually seeing that, like monsters under the beds is true. It's the jinns. That stuff's all true. And the women that get pregnant, and what's his name? I forget his name. They told me one time what the name of that jinn that comes. That's the general name, but he's got an actual name, that jinn that comes. And he comes and he when the woman's pregnant, I forget what it's called, Jamsham or something like that. I forget. They all got names. So the miscarriage. Especially if it's a boy, but generally speaking. No, what? It's real.
But I heard a story saying that someone killed that person, that Jin's baby, so it's like a revenge.
Yeah, look, I don't know what the asl of it is. It could be the case, but it's a true. There's the jinns out there doing those things. No. What about paranormal movies? Depending on the individual, but yeah. So movies about the jinns and about those types of things. Like I said to you, most of those movies, they're not just made up. No one can come up with stuff like that. Most of the successful movies are based on true stories. And then when you look at the stuff that's the occult, right? These people, like, let's look at it straight. There's two streams. There's the stream of Allah, and there's this, which is the prophets and Allah Azza wa Jal, and the prophets alayhim salam. And there's the stream of the shaitan. These two are going to come to a head one day, soon. Right? So the people of the occult, we want to spread da'wah. Why do we want to spread da'wah? La ilaha illallah Muhammad Rasulullah. Why do we want to do that? To who? What do they want to do? Why do they want to spread their stuff? To corrupt. Right? That's what's going on. So we say Bismillah, Allahu Akbar. We say these things to, if you want conjure, which is not what we're doing, we're asking Allah to help. Allah's help comes, and they're doing the opposite. So we want to spread our culture, the hijab, You know what happened to Samahullah after Christchurch? They want to spread their culture of corruption. So, you know, the movies that come out, they're real. They're actually real. Most, not every single part of it, but old movies like Indiana Jones and whatever it was, something or other. Anyway, what happens is Indiana Jones is an archaeologist, and what does he go and get? He gets the tabut of Sayyidina Musa and Harun. This is a real movie. Like they had the tabut of, I don't know what it is, like a crypt.
The Holy Grail, Ark of the Covenant. Ark of the Covenant.
Yeah, right. Ark of the Covenant, right? And there's the when they used to take that the Bani Israel, wherever they used to go, they used to win the battle. The movie, it's exactly what's there, right? It's exactly it's what happens, and it's an action movie fiction, but it's not really affecting people's minds and states. So don't take watching movies lightly. It's brainwashing. We're being brainwashed by movies. That's the only word I can use. And you've got to pick the movies that you want to watch and the movies that you don't want to watch. Tamam? Is there any other questions about that?
Yeah, so what was the sign that you said about the specific to the end of times, about the Shabbat? Something like Shiva is relevant to the end of times.
Yeah, so all those abracadabras and all that business, that trains people to accept when the Dajjal comes, because the Dajjal is going to come with sihr. He's going to say to the ground, Ambiti, ring up, it's going to become green. He's going to say to the sky, rain, it's going to rain. That's what he's going to do with magic. He's going to call people's relatives out of the grave, or with magic. No, backed out.
Sorry, I'm not allowed to ask questions.
No, so I just asked that question.
Okay, last question, promise.
I mean, yeah, go for it.
So, my daughter asked me a question, and I wasn't really sure how to answer it. So I wanted to know what's the best way.
Who asked the question? Okay, khair.
What's the best way to answer it? So she was asking, because there's a lot of Easter exposure now. So she was asking about Easter, relating it to Islam and all that. Well, she knows the difference. And then she asked me, why on earth do men and women pray separately? That's not sharing. They're not sharing the prayer. Why are they separated?
Yeah, it's a bit hard to explain to someone who isn't pubescent, that question. So the question was, why aren't men and women sharing? You have to explain, I think, that men are different to women. Like daddy is not like mummy. They're equal, but they're different to each other. So different people do different things. And you got to say, for example, why do the girls go to the girls' toilet and the boys go to the boys' toilet? She does curse at school, doesn't she? So she knows that they don't have mixed toilet in school yet. Hey. So you got to explain it to her in a way that she can understand it without explaining that. Because unless a person's pubescent and they're attracted to the opposite gender, that's not going to make any sense to her. So you got to explain it to her in a way.
So what about Disney movies? I was like, so I said two different things. I don't know if they're right. I said, so it's the men that fall in love with the women, so they can just focus on praying to God.
Did she get that?
She laughed. She thought.
Yeah, but did she get it? As long as she gets it, it doesn't matter. Because she'll know the real reason later on. So the things, we don't lie to our children, but we don't tell them everything. Like, imagine if we sat down with our kids and explained to them about shaitan and dajjal and all the jinns, and they'll lose their minds. Your child will lose their mind. So it's got to be age appropriate according to their capacity to comprehend things. As long as we don't lie to them, because later on, if you lie to your child, later on they feel betrayed by you. And that relationship that you have with your child becomes weaker. Your relationship that an individual has with their child, or a parent has with their child in particular, should be one of ultimate trust. Your children must be able to tell you anything, no matter how bad, how disgraceful, how vulgar, how indecent it is, and you need to be able to handle that. If you can't, you're never going to be a good parent for your child. It doesn't mean that you don't deal with it in an appropriate way, but if a parent flies off the handle, the child's telling for a reason, because they need help. Even though they're not saying, mummy or daddy, help me, they're telling for a reason. They know what they've done. They don't feel good about that. And they're looking for guidance and how to deal with their situation. They don't also want to deal with mum and dad going off the handle. It's too much. They're already having a problem with whatever they're having with. And they're little people. They don't know what you know. So our job is to rear them in the best possible way. So if we lie to them and they found out later on that we lied, then they're going to mistrust us. And that again breaks down that relationship. But if we don't tell them the complete truth because they can't comprehend it, but explain it to them in a way they can comprehend, then they're fine with that. They're fine with that.
I think some kids are capable of advancing in their learning at an early seen videos of kids saying football at a scholarly level, and it's more, so
That's mu'jizat, that's different. But according to their capacity, according to your child's capacity, whatever that may be, so it's got to be that in a way where they comprehend that. And then later on, as they develop and they understand the different aspects, the pubescence and all these things, then it'll become clear and plain to them. But we never lie to our children. Shouldn't lie to anyone or anything, including animals and things like that. So that's a key, but just age appropriate. If that's what you said and she's fine with it, it doesn't matter if she laughed or whatever, that's fine. As long as she can accept that that's the case and there isn't, an oppression or some sort of inequality because someone's a female in Islam and someone's a male in Islam.
I'm just saying if there's an actual other reason for that.
The reason is that it's physical, someone's bending down of the opposite gender in front of you is going to distract you. It's simple as that. But she's not going to get that because she doesn't have that attraction yet. She's not sexual in that state yet. Tamam, any other things that anyone wants to ask? I reckon we can go home now, can't we? Isn't that enough? I'm not joking. That's as much voice as I've got. I didn't think we were going to go through all that. So, next, what time is it? Yeah, it's enough, isn't it? Tamam? Well, if I had a bit more voice, I would have kept going, but that's it. I've run out of steam for today. But the main thing is, it's good, alhamdulillah, that you understood the qadr. That's the other thing. That's the main thing. And the other things that you mentioned, that we spoke about, they're important to know. Because at the end of times, that's the time when we live in, and we have to be aware of what's going on around us. It's not just that we look at the hadith about alamat as-sa'a, about the signs of the end of times. We have to look at the prophetic tradition in terms of what the circumstances are of the believers and of the non-believers at the end of time. And that's like that hadith about hujr al-dab, the lair of the lizard. That's relevant to us. It wasn't relevant to the Muslims that lived 1,000 years ago. But for us, that's a big, scary thing. That's a big, scary thing because the Prophet mentioned that as it gets closer to the end of time, we're going to do more and more and more of those things. That what we watch on TV, what we expose our children to, it's fine to let them watch cartoons. And really, do you know what the issue is? That we don't produce anything that's worthwhile as Muslims, What happened to Zaki? Is he still alive? No? He's in a coma?
When the next funding round comes.
Okay? So, we don't have our own characters. You know what I mean? There was one movie called Bilal. I never watched it. I wanted to. It's a cartoon movie. Is it any good? Anyone see it? Right? But we're not producing anything. We're our superheroes. Our superheroes are the Sahaba and the Tabi'een. And our stories are about great akhlaq, about being a great human being, about embodying the prophetic character in our humanity. Our stories aren't about people that steal stuff and get away with it. That's what movies we watch, or what do they call it? Sorry, it's chick flicks, what do they call it? Love triangles.
There are cartoon shows.
Yeah, do the kids like them though? The kids do? Yeah. Well, then stop letting kids watch if they're in tune. Because I've seen some of them and they're just like really inane. They're just like, are you serious? Because this is the thing. The rest of the world's producing this awesome standard with like $100 million tech and whatever, like special effects, and we're producing this, backyard rubbish. Really, I mean, the story is awesome. Have you watched the movie The Message? Has everyone watched that? That's awesome production. That's it's big actors, people that know how to act. Our one's like, and then you watch other ones, Anyway, we don't want to go too hard there, but it's got to be commensurate. And that's our issue. Rather than spending money on what we spend money on, we need to be spending money on different things to make sure our kids don't get lost. To make sure our kids have that entertainment, feel that they're kids. And so Ramadan coming up should be a huge celebration. Kids should enjoy it more than Christmas and more than all those types of years. And then again, if it's commensurate, then they won't worry about Christmas. They won't worry about it. That's my experience. With my nephews and nieces, we always get them balloons and jumping castles and petting zoos, and the petting comes to the house and all that. and whatever else the kids are doing. Clowns, we did that one time. And whatever else the kids are doing, let them enjoy, and always take them to those shows. They used to, Eid shows, sorry. They have the Eid shows where they go and ride on rides and all that. That's all mubah. That's something mubah, which is acceptable. Like it's permissible, yani. Take them and make them say, this is about Eid. This is about Eid. And no matter what they do or don't learn in school, it's up to the parents to instill that in the children. The children are instilled with that thing, and they feel that they're missing out because they're Muslim. They're always going to have a question mark inside. They're always going to have that question mark. How come my friend can do that? How come my cousin can do that? How come my neighbor? How come my classmate? How come? So that also means that when a child's young, we have to be careful about what we let them watch and listen to and speak about and read. We have to be careful. Because if they can't intellectualize something, then they're always going to feel like they're missing out. But once they start to intellectualize it, in other words, say, yep, this is the good about it, this is the bad about it. Dad, how come my friend can drink alcohol, let's say, for example, and they're 15, I don't know how old, but normally 15 is the age, 14, 15. Or mum. And mum says, oh, look what happens, shows them the YouTube videos of people doing this. It shows them the statistics like 40% of people who lose their virginity, girls, are drunk when they do it and they regret it later. All the different things that the negative aspects of drinking alcohol, it's the gateway drug, not marijuana, all the different things. And the child can intellectualize that thing. Once a child can think good and bad, tamyiz they call it, once a child can do that, then you've got to trust the child. But when they can't do that, you've got to protect the child. You've got to protect it. Don't believe what everyone's telling you, expose your kids. No, don't. Don't expose them to that. As much as possible, cotton wool them when they're young. As much as possible, expose them to what's positive. When they're older, of course, you have to let them be exposed to the other stuff. But they've already been, with the Assisin, they're already established. They've got that foundation and they're established that, they're not going to go. And so that means, if you've got kids, take them on holidays, take them to SeaWorld and whatever, Adventure World, or whatever they've got, the slide thing here in Western Sydney, and take them to wherever they want to go, and you got to let them be free. The child has to let themselves be who they are. So take them, let them run around and paint and get dirty and roll around in the dirt. I'm using Ibi's example one time and picked on him today. One time it was raining. Ibi was on fire. It had been raining for like 4 or 5 days. And then his dad used to fill up these barrels of water and he looked at his dad. His dad knew straight away. He goes, can I? He goes, yeah. And jumped in. It was raining. It was freezing. It was the middle of winter. And he'd be swimming around in the barrels, mashallah. It was freezing. And he came and his skin was red. It was so hot. You got to do that. I know you don't want to swim and you can't swim or jump in the rain, but the kid wants to do it. Oh, he's going to get sick. He's going to get dirty, or she. Let the child express themselves in that way. If he was going to run out into traffic, that's a different story. But if he's just going to get a bit wet, he'll be all right. Get him to take a hot shower and sit in front of the heater and not go out, whatever the case is. We were talking about that the other day when we were kids. We had to sneak out of the house when it rained so we could play footy, because it was always more fun because there'd be that much water on top of the water service, and we could slide around and you wouldn't get hurt, and you could run for 5 hours because your body was being cooled by the water. It's good for a kid. We want to cotton wool our kids. I don't mean cotton wool our kids in that way. Because we cotton wool them in that way, we don't have any men. Sorry, boys. And at the same time, we don't have that many women either, unfortunately. We have somewhere in between. Later on, when they get older, you got to trust your children. When older is 14, 15, when they become that teenager, if you try and press them and keep them down, they will rebel against you. That's what the Prophet said. It's not what I said, alayhi salatu wassalam. That's what he said. When they reach 13, 14, they become pubescent. You got to trust your child. And if you can't trust your child, you're the problem. It means you didn't rear your child in the right way. It's you that are the problem, not your child. Because you've got that 9, 10, 11, 12 years, 13, 14 years to organise the kid, to get the kid straight. If you haven't done it by that stage, the only regret is on oneself. Right? So that's the kind of pattern that we use. And then the hard teaching comes between 10 and 14. That's when it's discipline, because the kid can comprehend things. They can intellectualize things. When they're young, let them be. So that's, if you ask me, that's the problem in our community. Not that we haven't got this, and not that we haven't got that, They are all problems. We don't have a media, and they're all problems. But the issue is the rearing of the children. I know when we were young, when we had friends who were white Aussies, Wazies, right? Their parents, their mum would come to our house. Who are these people if we want to go play with their son? If I want to go talk to us, talk to my parents. Why don't your parents come over? Why don't you guys invite us to your house? Not because they want to know who their child's playing with. It's not a part of our culture to do that. You need to do that. You need to make sure that you know who your child's playing with, what environment you're sending your child into. Tamam? All right? Alhamdulillah Rabbil Alameen, wassalatu wassalamu ala khayril anam wa ala alihi wa sahbihi sallam. Ya Rahman Rahim, alhamdulillah bi rahmatil wasi'ah. Allah, we ask to forgive us and forgive our sins and elevate our status in this life and the next. We ask you to make us of those people that understand your deen and practice your deen and love your deen, and whatever you've decreed, Ya Allah, to make that the most beloved thing to us, and to give us the raghbah, give us the hope to, and be impassioned to apply that into our lives, Ya Allah, and the lives of those around us. I ask you to elevate the status of our mashaykh and accept all that we do, and accept the people that facilitated this gathering, inshallah, of learning and teaching. And we ask you to forgive our parents and our forefathers. بخير ولطف وعافية ولا حضرة النبي بالسر الفاتحة.